What if the next medical breakthrough could change thousands of lives? Welcome to Moving Medicine Forward, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on the breakthroughs shaping the future of healthcare. I'm your host, Jeremy Schran, and together with CTI's leading experts, we explore the cutting edge of clinical research transforming patient care. Each episode, we dive into the science, strategy, and innovation driving medical advancements, joined by global therapeutic experts who are redefining how we understand and treat critical disease. From rare genetic conditions to revolutionary treatment protocols, we're not just discussing research, we're sharing the human stories that move medicine forward. Today I'm joined by Dr. Helio Tedesco, a longtime leader in transplantation medicine with nearly 40 years of experience caring for patients and more than 25 years involved in clinical research. Throughout his career, Dr. Tedesco worked closely with CTI as an investigator and a research partner, helping advance therapies that have improved outcomes for transplant patients around the world. Recently, he made a unique transition from the site side of research to the CRO side by joining CTI. In this episode, we'll discuss his career journey, what inspired this next chapter, and how collaboration between investigators, sites, and CROs helps bring life-changing therapies to patients who need them most. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Tedesco. We're so excited to have you back on, and this time as an employee of CTI.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again. Now working for CTI. It's a pleasure to be part of this podcast.
Can you give us a brief overview of your career journey and what led you to CTI?
I have worked in a transplant center for almost 40 years. And for more than 25 years, I've been in close contact with clinical research and international clinical trials. And that attracted me to the research areas. And during this time, I have worked in many studies with CTI, and we had a very good and close relationship to really succeed in the development of new drugs for clinical transplantation. And actually, all the drugs that our patients are receiving right now have been developed by transplant centers like the one that I work for and CTI. Last year, I decided that I had to change path. I took a 6-month sabbatical to think about it. Tim Schroeder invited me to visit CTI in Cincinnati. And we've been discussing a couple of times before if I was really interested in joining CTI. And eventually in January, I thought this could be a very good experience, at least to give a try and learn the process of doing clinical research from the CRO side. And since then, I've been onboarding, which is a very difficult process. But day by day, I'm really enjoying more and more the work that I'm doing for CTI and, of course, for the transplant centers and the patients.
What are the biggest changes you've seen in transplant and nephrology over the course of your career?
Many.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. But I think because of my area of interest, I think what I witnessed the most was the changes in the immunosuppressive drug regimens that
Mhm.
patients are receiving right now. And that is interesting because we are in a new era of new medications that, in my particular point of view, will change the lives of these patients. But in addition, we had a lot of other improvements for diagnostics, either diagnostics of rejection, but also infections and other complications. And more recently, two new strategies. First, all the perfusion machines that we are using right now to really improve the quality of the organs and even helping to allocate these organs to the most ideal patient. And even more recent, I've been in contact with the initial trials with the xenotransplantation, which I never thought when I began my career that I would see at first one. And we have seen many so far. And perhaps this is going to help most needy patients that are not able to get a allo transplant.
Xenotransplant is so fascinating to me. I can't believe it's something that we can do now.
Yeah, you're right.
What challenges do transplant patients face that people outside of the field or maybe somebody who doesn't have experience with transplantation that they don't fully understand?
The first one is really to get a transplant. If you consider the cohort of patients on dialysis, less than 30% of them are on the waiting list for kidney transplantation, regardless of the country. And among them, just a small percentage eventually get a transplant. And many of them may wait more than 5 years on dialysis to
Wow.
get a transplant. So it's really difficult to really get access and actually receiving a transplant. The second point is that patients live with the fear of rejection. They have to take medicines for life. They also fear that complications of the chronic use of immunosuppressive drugs may eventually end up in complications such as infections and malignancies. We need to really look at the patient and try to devise immunosuppressive regimens that are easier to take with the fear or no side effects and more safer.
What experiences from your years treating patients had the greatest impact on you as a physician?
Oh, many. It's interesting. You learn with every single patient. And as an example, we do have a combination of drugs that we give for most of the patients because that combination shows highest efficacy. But individual patient needs vary. And you need really to discuss with each patient what are their needs, what are the goals of that transplantation in their lives and the lives of their families. So it's not simply to really prescribe the same combination of drugs and look at for clinical outcomes. We need to look at quality of life, expectations that each patient has with that transplantation, and that you only learn when you practice in a daily basis and see many, many different patients.
What first sparked your interest in clinical research? You mentioned you've been doing clinical research for like 25 years. What was that initial spot of like, I really want to be involved in the research side?
I was in my first or second year of fellowship as a training transplant physician, and I came across one manuscript in a journal. It was very interesting manuscript on how to improve the administration of a drug at that time was cyclosporine by measuring the concentration of the drug in the blood of the patient. So that was the first insight into individualizing the dose for the patients to reach highest efficacy and safety. And from that, I just realized that I had to be involved in clinical research to really develop better strategies for our patients.
So, having worked in both patient side and research, how do you view the relationship between the two?
It's fundamental because to develop better strategies for the patients, you need to do clinical research. This relationship, it's been in the history, not only at our transplant center, but I believe in each transplant center. If you ask everybody in each center has its own standard of care, way to treat the patients. For example, you have an international clinical trial, you design the way that that drug combination should be given, but only when you really use it in your patients and you adapt it to your patients is that you really can really obtain the best result. So combining research and clinical experience is the way that you improve patient outcomes, quality of life, and perhaps many other endpoints that we are looking for today.
As a senior medical director at CTI, how does your background as a physician influence the way you approach protocol development and medical oversight?
As a physician, I was involved in many clinical trials. And so you get in contact with different protocol designs. But that experience really taught me the importance of first asking the right question. You need to design the protocol. We need to be sure that at the end of the study, that question is going to be answered, whether the answer is positive or negative. It doesn't really matter much because the two answers are really important for the next steps of drug development. And it's different because in a clinical trial, you select a very homogeneous population. But then when you go out and treat your patients, this is a highly heterogeneous population, and you have really to combine the knowledge that you got in the clinical trial to the each individual that you're treating as a clinical assistant. You need to develop protocols that are easy to be done, easy for the patient, because complexity involves risk, and risk really compromise the answer that you want from that particular trial.
Well, how can a physician's perspective help ensure clinical trials are practical for the investigator and the patients themselves?
Coming from a transplant center and having a large experience. So I look at the protocols and I see where problems may arise. Just if you look at inclusion and exclusion criteria, may not be clear enough to really instruct the centers to enroll a patient. But the procedures that you have to do during the study are feasible. Can the patient show up? Is the schedule of visits adequate? Can we do that? Can we get that information? So being at the center as an investigator really helps understanding the protocol design and it helps us improve them just to really be able to accurately go over the study visits and be easier for the patients to follow.
How many transplants have you been involved in your career? Do you have any idea?
Since the beginning of my career, I would say more than 25,000.
That's incredible. That is so much. And I'm so excited that you're bringing that experience to CTI to help us design trials and help patients in the future. So, what does your experience in transplantation and clinical research bring to CTI's clients and study teams? That
Uh,
25,000 transplants that you've been involved in, that's a lot.
yeah, it's a lot. What I perhaps can add and bring to CTI and sponsor and patients is really the experience that I have as an investigator, as a physician, and now moving to a CRO really to help design easier protocols to really understand the mechanism of the disease, the mechanism of the action of the new therapies that we are using. And we really devise strategies to answer those questions in a faster way, the most efficient way, and eventually providing new therapies for patients.
I've got one more question for you.
Okay.
After more than 40 years in medicine, research, and clinical development, all this experience that you have, what continues to drive and motivate you today? And what are you most excited about in the future of medicine?
What drives me to really keeping working and design and develop new therapies is that we cannot be satisfied with the outcomes that we are currently seeing for kidney transplant recipients or even all solid organ transplant recipients. There are studies showing that 5 or 10 year patient survival are comparable to patients with different types of cancer. So we need to improve that. Cannot rest and having these outcomes that are not really what we want for them. In addition, patients need to take medicines forever. And if you look at typical patient, the patient may take 10 to 20 different medications to prevent rejection and to treat comorbidities. There are a lot of ways and areas of research that we may develop in the future to make the life of our patients better and easier. And that is what drives me currently.
Obrigado. Thank you, Dr. Tedesco. Thank you for joining us on the podcast today. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tedesco, for sharing your story and perspectives with us today. Your experience on both sides of clinical research provides a unique view of what it takes to advance transplantation medicine. And it's exciting to hear how you're continuing that mission here at CTI. And as always, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and leave us a review. Visit ctifacts.com to learn more about how we can help you with your clinical trials. And until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep moving medicine forward.